everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, join the family. I'm so happy to have you here. Let's go. So before we get into this, yet again, heavy spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, if you haven't watched the movies, go ahead, watch them, then come back and watch this. So today we're going to be talking about two movies that I personally really love and highly recommend. We're talking about Call Me By Your Name and Moonlight. If you're wondering why I'm comparing the two, it is because both movies are really important to society. Both movies depict what it's like to be young and gay in today's society. Well, kind of. Moonlight is set in the present and Call Me By Your Name is set in the 80s. However, both play a big role today, showing what it's like to be young and to be gay in society. Alright, let's do a brief run through of what Call Me By Your Name was about. Call Me By Your Name is set in northern Italy in the summer of 1983. It follows a boy, Elio, played by Timothy Chalamet, who lives with his parents in northern Italy. His father is an archaeology professor and invites Oliver to come stay with them over the summer. Oliver is played by Armie Hammer. Over the course of the movie, we see the relationship between Oliver and Elio evolve. At the beginning of the movie, we see Elio, who is rather upset about having to give up his room to Oliver, but he gets over it because what can he do? Elio is a musician, he reads a lot, and he's very introverted. Oliver, on the other hand, is a lot more extroverted. We see Elio become increasingly annoyed with Oliver as he becomes more involved with the woman in the town. Over the course of the movie, we see the relationship between Elio and Oliver evolve, and we see romance and sexual tension beginning to build up. At one point, Elio confesses his feelings to Oliver, and although Oliver is fighting it, eventually he gives in and they begin a relationship. They have this relationship throughout the course of the movie, and we see Elio's parents, who know about it but don't speak about it, being rather accepting. At the end of the movie, Oliver, of course, has to go home because he was only there for 6 weeks. Over Hanukkah, Oliver calls the family and lets them know that he is engaged. He speaks to Elio, not much is said. All he says is that he really remembers everything that happened, and Elio is left crying in front of the fireplace. It's really sad, like it will break your heart. Alright, Moonlight. Moonlight follows the story of a boy named Sharon. We see him progress throughout his life as a child, as a teenager, and then as an adult. At the beginning of the movie, we see Sharon running away from a pack of bullies who are running after him and calling him the F-slur. He finds an abandoned apartment block and he hides in one of the houses. Later, a man named Juan, I'm saying that right, if I'm not, please correct me. Juan finds him inside the house and he is trying to find out where Sharon's house is, what he can do to help him, but Sharon is silent. He eventually takes Sharon home with him to his house where he lives with his girlfriend. They take him inside, they let him eat, they let him spend the night, and the next day he takes Sharon home. When he takes Sharon home, you meet the mother. The mother is very angry, and we later find out that the mother is a drug addict. Part of the movie, which is titled Little, we see Sharon at school and how he is consistently bullied for being who he is. However, he has one friend named Kevin. Kevin is by his side throughout the movie, and they are really, really good friends. We then move on to the second part of the movie, titled Sharon. In this part, we see that Sharon still has a good relationship with Juan and his girlfriend Teresa. We see him at school still being bullied by a pack of boys, although this time it is even more intense. Later on in the movie, Sharon goes to the beach, and as he's there, he runs across Kevin, who is also there to smoke. They sit together, they smoke, they talk, and as they're talking, you see Sharon open up about his sexuality. Eventually, they kiss and have a sexual encounter, and that happens. Then, the next day at school, the group of bullies who was still bullying Sharon, convinced Kevin to beat him up. Kevin, not knowing what to do and not wanting to face judgment from others, beats Sharon up. The next day, Sharon, in anger, hits the main bully with a chair and gets expelled. We then move on to the third and final part of the movie, Black. In this part, we see Sharon as an adult. He is now living the life of a gangster, drug dealer, type 5. We now know that Juan is dead, but he still has a good relationship with Teresa. In this part, we see Sharon go home to visit his mother, who is now in rehab. There, they have a long talk, and the mother apologizes for everything, and Sharon forgives her. Now, the day before he left, Kevin called him after years of them not speaking. Kevin calls him and tells him that he's thinking of Sharon, and that if Sharon has time, he should come and see him. Since Sharon is in town, he links up with Kevin at his restaurant. While they're there, they talk, and you can see that their friendship picks up again. At the end, we see Kevin and Sharon in Kevin's house, where they chat some more, and at this point, you can see them opening up and being vulnerable with each other about their sexuality, but it's in a very covert way. The movie ends with Kevin and Sharon in an embrace, much like the one that they had at the beach. So, both movies did really, really well. Moonlight got 6 nominations at the Golden Globe and won Best Picture, and at the Academy Awards, it got 8 nominations and won Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Adapted Screenplay. If you remember the Oscars from that year, that was when La La Land, they won and then they didn't, which I thought was really funny because I did not think that La La Land deserved to win, so I was happy. Call Me By Your Name received 3 nominations at the Golden Globes and 4 nominations at the Golden Globes and 4 nominations at the Academy Awards, at which it won Best Adapted Screenplay. Also, in a sense, made history because Timothée Chalamet was one of the youngest actors to be nominated since 1939, which is mind-blowing. So I'm going to talk about each movie individually, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you about which one I think is better and why. Call Me By Your Name, I think, is really good. I love the way that the movie was shot, and I really love the music in the movie, and something that I like a lot is also that there was great character development. Unlike 365 Days, which I spoke about in my previous video, there was actually character development here. We see both characters evolve and change as time goes on and as they are impacted by the things that happen in the story. In the beginning of the movie, we see Elio, who appears to be very closed off. He is young, in a sense naive, and doesn't really know what he wants, and we see him mature throughout the movie. At the beginning of the movie, we see Oliver, who at first appeared to be very self-centered and very arrogant, and we see him open up and become more vulnerable throughout the course of the movie. The relationship also was not rushed, and I feel like that's something that happens a lot in media when it comes to queer relationships, is that they tend to be rushed and there isn't a lot of build-up behind the relationship like you would get with straight couples. And I really like the relationship between Elio and Oliver progressed in a really nice and relatable way. My main issue with the movie is the fact that Elio was 17 and Oliver was 24. That just doesn't sit right with me. That doesn't really sit right with me. And I think on the other hand, it is relatable that, you know, when you're young, you sometimes do fall for people who are a lot older than you. But on the other hand, I also feel like that's a bit predatory in my opinion. Why is a 24-year-old going after a 17-year-old? I mean, yeah, it's a bit of an issue for me. However, I still think that Call Me By Your Name is a really, really, really good movie, and I think that everyone should watch it. But also, it's overhyped. And you guys are gonna come with me for this, but it really is overhyped. And I think that a lot of people love it because Timothy Chalamet is in it. Let's be real for a second. Let's be real. People are obsessed about Timothy Chalamet. And I think that's a big reason why Call Me By Your Name is so popular. Yes, it's a good movie, and yes, it represents real life issues that are very relatable for real people. However, I feel like it's a bit out of touch. It speaks to a very particular group of LGBT people. A lot of people don't have similar experiences where they have an opportunity to be with someone and not necessarily be judged for it. Elio's parents were very, very accepting. Everyone else around him was very accepting. And I think, sure, that is real, but a lot of people don't have that experience. And I think it just showed a very privileged point of view. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I just think that, it could have touched on more serious social issues. I mean, yes, you'll watch it and yes, you'll most probably cry, but is it the best movie about LGBT people? No, it really isn't. Like, it's not that great. Right, Moonlight. The thing I really liked about Moonlight is the fact that we follow Sharon from kid to an adult. And that is important because we see him develop and change as situations happen from beginning to end. We see him first as a really, really shy, really introverted, scared boy. And at the end of the movie, we see him as a completely different person. We see how he's been hardened by all the experiences that he's gone through, and how his environment shaped him to become the person that he is. Sharon living in the environment in which he did, where he is surrounded by drugs and violence, it is expected that he would fall into that life. And I think there's always this narrative that, you can escape that, you can beat that, but it's not always that realistic. One thing that I really like about Moonlight is that it is very, very realistic. Because a lot of Black people can identify with that. Even taking away the element of sexuality, even without that, it is still a very, very relatable movie to a lot of Black people. I could watch Moonlight 100 times and still be in awe every time I watch it. The themes that it touched on so many different themes, and it did it perfectly. They touched on the experience of LGBT people while being Black. It touched on toxic masculinity. It touched on childhood, father figures. It touched on bullying. It just touched on so many different issues, and I think that's why it deserved to win Best Picture. There are not a lot of movies that depict what it is like to be Black and be in the LGBT community. There are a lot of movies that show what it's like to be gay and to be white, but there's not a lot of movies that show what it's like to be gay and to be Black. And that's why Moonlight is such an important movie, because it gives a voice to people who don't have it. Young Black people can watch that movie and identify with it. Young Black people living in the same situation that Chiron did can watch that movie and be like, I see myself in this. And that's why I think Moonlight is such an important movie, because it shines a light on an issue that not a lot of people have awareness about, but a lot of people go through. And it saddens me that Moonlight is not given the same hype as Call Me By Your Name. And I think we need to acknowledge the fact that it isn't given that same hype because it's a Black movie about Black people. And I'm sure some of you are going to say, don't make this about race. It's not about race, but it is about race, because a lot of movies about Black people they don't get enough attention. You'll have really, really, really good movies made by black people with black casts, but you'll never hear about them like you will about white movies. And it's sad. It's really sad because it hurts me as a black person to know that I can watch a really great movie like Moonlight, but it will never be as popular as a movie like Call Me By Your Name. But overall, I do think that Moonlight is a better movie than Call Me By Your Name. And if you haven't watched Moonlight, go and watch it, please. And if you have watched it, watch it again, because the more you watch it, the more things you pick up and the more in love you fall with the characters. Yeah. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me. Also, yes, this is put out on a Wednesday, not a Monday. I'm sorry, I had technical difficulties and I could not post on Monday. So I'm sorry, but I will be posting next Monday. So don't worry, look out for that. But yeah, it was great hanging out with you guys. And